Toronto Blue Jays All-Star Jose Bautista has his price and is unwilling to budge from that number. And if the Blue Jays plan to continue utilizing his services north of the border, they're going to have to pony up in order to do it. The question becomes, will new team president Mark Shapiro be inclined to oblige? And what about the prospects for their upcoming season? I recently spent some time with Barry Davis, the Blue Jays sideline reporter for Rogers Sportsnet, as we chatted about everything Blue Jays. First of all, Barry, we want to thank you for your time this evening and for joining us to talk Blue Jays baseball on the Two-Man Advantage podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Always good to talk about the Blue Jays.
So when we look at Jose Bautista and his upcoming contract dispute, obviously he's been one of the most productive players in all of baseball since he's joined the Blue Jays. So I'm just wondering how you think this whole contract situation will shake out.
Wow, that's a good question, and we may not know that until the end of the season. He's pretty much told the Blue Jays how much he wants and how many years he wants, which he has not made public. Now it's up to the Blue Jays to decide what to do, and I don't expect them to say, here you go, here's your money. I think they're going to wait and see how the season plays out. If the Blue Jays are in a playoff race, they're going to keep him, and they're going to figure out what's going to happen in the off season. If he decides to re-sign somewhere else, then he will, the Blue Jays will end up getting a draft pick out of it. If he decides to take what the Blue Jays are offering or willing to negotiate, then maybe the Blue Jays bring him back. But I don't see anything being resolved in the near future.
And when you look at the new leadership with Mark Shapiro taking over as team president, based on his conservative nature, when it was with the Indians, do you think that will play a role in the Bautista negotiations?
I think what you'll see from Mark Shapiro is completely different than what you'll see in Cleveland. He had a very limited budget in Cleveland, and his hands were really tied. Now things are a lot different in Toronto. He has a bigger budget to deal with. I think if Jose Bautista is not re-signed by Mark Shapiro and the Blue Jays, it won't be because of money. Strictly, it won't be a money decision. It will be a baseball decision. And with Jose Bautista being 35 years old right now and wanting to get a 5 or 6 year contract and get paid somewhere around $30 million a season, it doesn't make baseball sense to pay somebody that kind of money, especially when you consider that every team has a budget. So if you give Jose Bautista $30 million out of your budget, that's taking up a lot of money when you can have 3 or 4 players that make up that kind of money. So there are a lot of baseball decisions that have to be made as well, and very rarely do long-term, high-paid contracts pan out. So it's a very high-risk situation. You can also argue that how many more great years does Jose Bautista have left in him? Well, probably this year will be one of his best because he is playing for that contract, and he has set the bar very high for himself, wanting to get paid as one of the best players in the game. So that's going to be huge for him this year.
And when you look, in your opinion, how much money do you think Bautista is worth at this stage of his career?
And that's an interesting question, but he's worth what a team is willing to pay him. So if there's a team willing to pay him $30 million, then I guess that's what he's worth. I would think if you want to just give a ballpark figure, I think that it's a lot more than what he's making right now. But I can also say I don't know if there's anybody in the game worth $30 million per season. I think that, if you base it on the highest paid players in the game right now, I think that, Miguel Cabrera should be paid the most money. In my opinion, if you won an MVP, you deserve to be paid the top money in the game. Jose Bautista hasn't won an MVP. He's a very, very good player. I don't want to, to make you think that I don't think he's one of the great players in the game. But I would say somewhere maybe in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 million a season. But then, and that's a lot of money too. But I don't really see him being worth 30 a year.
Now on the field, what kind of a season are you expecting the Blue Jays to have?
I think they're going to have a terrific season. I think that right now nobody in baseball has an offense as good as them. I think if the guys in the bullpen perform to their expectations, they're going to have an incredibly strong bullpen, and they're going to have a deep, not spectacular, but a very good starting rotation, and that's all they need with that offense. I think the Boston Red Sox are primed to be the team to beat in the American League East, but I think the Blue Jays are definitely right behind them, and I fully expect the Jays to be right in the playoff picture come September.
And how do you think the loss of David Price will affect the Blue Jays rotation?
I don't think it will affect the rotation, the fact that you don't have a David Price going every 5 days, but you have a much improved Marcus Stroman. There's a very good chance you're going to have an Aaron Sanchez in there as well. And I mean, the Blue Jays would have won a lot of those games that David Price pitched down the stretch. The Blue Jays may have won whether David Price was pitching or not because they were that much better of a team. Their offense was that good. That's not to say David Price didn't do a terrific job down the stretch, because he did. He was fantastic. But again, I don't think that's one of those things where you're going to look back and say, well, if they'd only had David Price, they may have won X amount of games. Remember, starting pitchers only go every 5 days. To me, it's a much bigger loss when you lose one of your top position players that's in the lineup every day.
And my final question for you has to do with 3 X factors that you think have to break right for the Blue Jays to have a successful season.
Oh, I think right off the get-go, it's the guy that I just mentioned, and Aaron Sanchez. We don't know where he's going to be when the season begins. If he's in the rotation, he's not the number 5 guy. He's going to be one of the top 3 starters on this team. Having said that, they can use him out of the bullpen as an absolutely deadly weapon. And you put Aaron Sanchez along with Roberto Osuna, Drew Storer, and Brett Cecil. Wow. Not too many teams would be able to beat that late in games. But I think where Aaron Sanchez ends up when the season begins is going to be one of the huge X factors of this team. I think Michael Saunders' recovery and whether or not he can become the player that the Blue Jays hoped he would be when the season began last year before he injured himself, I think that would be definitely X factor number 2. And I think X factor number 3 is going to be Ryan Goins, the guy that people figured was all glove, no bat. He proved a lot of people wrong late last season. And if he can continue that until Devin Travis returns from his injury, which will be sometime in May or June, and he's going to give Devin a good fight for that regular spot, I think Ryan Goins definitely would be X factor number 3 in my opinion.
Barry, I want to thank you for your time and for joining us this evening on the Two-Man Advantage podcast. It was a lot of fun talking Blue Jays baseball with you, and best of luck covering the remaining of spring training and the rest of the beginning of the Blue Jays season.
Hey, it was a lot of fun. Let's do it again, okay?
All righty, have a good day.
All right, keep in touch.
Bye-bye, you too.